Welcome to a video on organisms in a food web. Now this video is about the different words we use to describe each of these organisms. So we'll start with the bottom of the food web, grass. Grass is known as a producer. This is because it makes its own food using photosynthesis. Now, grass is also known as an autotroph. That also means it makes its own food. When we move on from grass, we have an organism like a rabbit. Now, a rabbit is known as a herbivore. It's a herbivore because it only eats plants. It's also a primary consumer, and it is a primary consumer because it eats a producer. We can say the same for a snail. A snail is a herbivore because it only eats plants. A snail is also a primary consumer because it eats the producer. If we move on to mice, however, this gets a little more complicated. Now, a mouse, we could say in this part of the food chain, it is a primary consumer, or we could say, following this food chain, that it is a secondary consumer. It depends which organism it is relying on for food. However, more importantly, a mouse is what we call an omnivore. An omnivore is anything that eats both animals and plants. Finally, we have a fox. Now, a fox is known as a carnivore. It's a carnivore because it only eats other animals and it does not eat plants. The fox following this particular food chain is a secondary consumer. The fox following this food chain is a tertiary consumer. So these terms will depend on which food chain you're looking at within this food web. Finally, a few other terms that we need for foxes are: the fox is an apex predator. That means it's the top of the food chain and that it hunts other organisms. Now, this is not to be confused with the top carnivore. The fox also happens to be a top carnivore, but sometimes there are other organisms known as scavengers. Now, a scavenger is not a predator. A predator will go out and hunt and kill other organisms. A scavenger, however, will wait for an organism to die for some other reason. Perhaps it is hunted and killed by another animal. Perhaps it has just died of old age. Perhaps it's been hit by a car. A scavenger does not hunt and kill. What a scavenger does is it will scavenge dead meat. It will find an already dead animal and eat it. So we could add to this food web the crow. A crow is a scavenger. If it finds some dead meat, if it finds a dead mouse, a dead fox, or a dead rabbit, it would also eat that. This would make it a top carnivore and a scavenger, but it is not an apex predator. Now finally, given we've talked about predators, we need to know what it is a predator hunts. Well, a predator always hunts something called a prey. So in this case, the fox is the predator, the rabbit is its prey, and the mouse is its prey.